Right. So today we're diving into some pretty heavy stuff, actually, surrounding Gateway Church and its founder, Robert Morris.
Yeah.
Kind of two big things happening. First, there's this whole indictment thing with Robert Morris going on to Oklahoma.
Right.
And then there's this, I don't know, kind of strange lawsuit about how the church does its whole tithing thing.
Interesting.
So I guess in this deep dive, what we really want to do is, break it all down, make sure we all understand what these accusations are, the legal stuff, and just try to figure out the whole picture. You know what I mean?
Yeah, this definitely feels like one of those situations where there's just like layer upon layer of stuff to unpack,
Yeah.
And it brings up a lot about trust and how we hold people accountable, especially in like religious settings,
Grand jury just slapped him with 5 felony charges. And this all came out after Cindy Clemencher came forward in June with some pretty serious allegations.
Yeah, those allegations are definitely not something to take lightly. They're saying that there was abuse happening for years, going all the way back to the 1980s. And the really disturbing part is that this supposedly started when Cindy Clemencher was only 12 years old.
Wow.
And at the time, Robert Morris was living with her family, working as a traveling evangelist.
Oh, right. For people who don't know, a traveling evangelist is basically someone who travels to different churches and places to preach the gospel. 5 felony counts of lewd or indecent acts to a child.
Right.
Like, these aren't just small-time offenses, Felony counts, that's some serious legal trouble.
Absolutely.
Each count is tied to a different date. And they're all saying he intentionally touched Clemencher's body or private parts.
Yeah.
It specifically mentions the first count happening on or around Christmas Day, December 25th, 1982, in Osage County, Oklahoma, when she was 12.
Jeez.
I mean, that's pretty specific, right? It's not just general accusation. They're talking about particular instances.
Yeah, and the fact that there are 5 different counts, each one for a separate date, really paints a picture of this not being just a one-time thing, It suggests a pattern of behavior, which is really concerning.
Absolutely. And, Cindy Clemencher, she spoke out after the indictment came down.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the video has a quote from her where she says it took almost 43 years, but the law is finally catching up to Robert Morris.
Wow.
And she talked about hoping for justice for the things she says he did to her when she was a kid. It's a powerful statement,
Yeah.
especially considering how much time has gone by.
Yeah, her words really hit home. Just how long she's had to carry this with her, And it shows just how much this legal action could mean for her and anyone else affected by this. It's like a reminder that even though the wheels of justice might turn slowly, there's still hope for accountability.
Yeah, absolutely. The Oklahoma Attorney General is involved in all this, and they're taking a really strong stance, saying there's zero tolerance for people who prey on children.
Good.
And something that's important to understand here is why the statute of limitations isn't stopping these charges from going forward.
Yeah, because usually there's a time limit on when you can bring charges for a crime, right?
Right, exactly. But apparently it doesn't apply here because Morris wasn't actually living in Oklahoma when all this allegedly happened.
Oh, I see. So the usual rules about how long someone has to press charges don't apply in this situation because he wasn't a resident.
Exactly. It's kind of complicated legal stuff, but that's the gist of it,
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So basically, his being out of state at the time means these charges can still move forward now.
Exactly.
Got it. Okay, so that's super important to understand in all of this.
Yeah.
It means that even though these alleged events happened a long time ago, the legal system can still potentially address them.
Right.
So it's not just about the passage of time, but also about legal jurisdiction and the specific circumstances of the case.
Right, totally. Okay, so let's shift gears a bit now and dig into some of the things Robert Morris and Gateway Church have said about all this in the past.
Okay.
This is where things get really interesting and honestly a bit confusing.
Okay.
Like, there are some pretty big inconsistencies popping up, and it's definitely something you'll want to pay attention to. Posted conversation from way back in 2005, where Morris apparently asked Cindy Clemencher what it would take for her to keep quiet about everything.
Wow, back in 2005.
Yeah, and she reportedly told him it wasn't about money, but then she threw out a number, like $2 million, and that was basically the end of that conversation.
Huh. That's pretty wild, I mean, if that conversation really happened the way it's being described, it raises some serious red flags about whether Morris was aware of these accusations and the potential for them to become public.
Right, it's like he was trying to make it go away.
Yeah, it definitely suggests an attempt to manage the situation and possibly prevent any negative consequences from coming out.
Right. Before all this blew up, Robert Morris had publicly talked about an inappropriate relationship, but in a really vague way. He said he'd been restored by God and all that, but he conveniently left out the part about this relationship being with a minor.
Oh, wow. So it's like he was trying to present it as a personal mistake he'd moved on from without revealing the really disturbing truth of it.
Exactly. It's like he was using this kind of ambiguous language
Yeah.
to downplay what really happened.
Yeah, it's like a classic example of minimizing harmful actions,
Yeah.
By framing it as a personal redemption story, he completely avoids acknowledging the harm caused to someone else. It's really manipulative when you think about it.
Right. The completely glossing over the fact that a child was involved.
Exactly. And then there's this whole statement from the Gateway elders that they admit that they knew about some kind of incident for a long time, but they claim they didn't realize it involved a teenager.
Seriously.
They're saying they thought it was with an adult woman and just considered it an inappropriate relationship that led to a 2-year, restoration process supposedly run by Shady Grove Church.
So they're trying to say they didn't have the full picture.
That's their story, but you got to wonder about the truth of it, how could they not know?
Especially when you consider that Robert Morris himself wrote about this time in his book, From Dream to Destiny. He talks about stepping down from ministry, getting a regular job, and he spins it as God telling him to be humble.
Oh, so he's presenting it as this spiritual growth moment.
Yeah, but of course he doesn't mention anything about the alleged abuse that was supposedly happening during that same time period.
It's just wild how he's using this whole narrative of personal humility and following God's plan while completely leaving out the serious allegations against him. It's like two totally different versions of the same story.
Exactly. And here's where the timelines get all messed up. So the Gateway elders claim there was this 2-year restoration process, right? But in Morris's book, he says he only worked as a security guard at Motel 6 for a month before going back to ministry.
Wait, a month versus 2 years?
Yep, that's a huge difference.
That's a massive inconsistency right there. I mean, come on, a month is not 2 years. It makes you question everything they're saying,
Totally.
Yeah.
And it just keeps getting worse. Because the Gateway elders' letter supposedly talks about a young lady being involved, which could easily make you think of someone closer to Morris's age back then.
Right, right.
And get this, they even claim that Cindy Clemensher's father gave his blessing for Morris to go back to ministry in 1989.
Wow.
But then her father denies ever doing that.
So basically, it's a whole mess of conflicting stories and shifting narratives. It's like they're trying to rewrite history.
It just makes you wonder what they're trying to hide,
Totally. And for anyone watching this video, it's a huge reminder to be critical of the information you're given, to look for those inconsistencies, and to be aware that there might be attempts to manipulate the story, especially when you're dealing with powerful institutions.
Okay, so let's move on to this whole other thing, which is just as crazy in a different way.
Yeah.
This lawsuit about Gateway Church's money-back guarantee on tithes.
Yeah, that one really caught my attention, too. It's not every day you see a church offering a financial guarantee like that, It's definitely unusual.
Robert Morris was constantly telling people that if they tithed for a whole year and weren't fully satisfied, they could get their money back.
Fully satisfied? What does that even mean in this context?
It's super vague, right?
Yeah, who decides if you're fully satisfied? And what criteria are they using? It's just so open to interpretation.
He's made this promise to the church multiple times, like it was a big selling point.
Huh. So it seems like he was actively encouraging people to tithe based on this guarantee.
It's a sick and twisted way to get people to tithe, especially considering how wealthy Morris supposedly is.
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty harsh criticism, but you can see where it's coming from, right? If the leader of the church is living a lavish lifestyle while asking people to give their hard-earned money with the promise of a refund if they're not happy, it does raise some ethical questions.
Absolutely. It makes you question the whole motivation behind it all, you know? Is it really about faith or is it about something else?
Exactly. And the fact that someone actually sued the church over this guarantee, it's just wow.
Yeah, the video doesn't get into the details of the lawsuit, but just the fact that it exists is pretty telling, right?
Yeah.
And apparently Robert Morris is trying to get the whole thing dismissed.
Yeah, so we'll have to see what happens with that. It'll be interesting to follow the legal developments and see what comes of it.
Totally.
Yeah, we covered a lot of ground today.
We sure did, from those really serious accusations and the indictment to that bizarre tithing guarantee and lawsuit. It's a lot to take in.
It's just one of those situations that makes you question a lot of things,
Yeah.
Especially when you're dealing with allegations that go back decades and there are so many different versions of the story being told.
Totally. It really makes you think about who you can trust, right?
Mm.
Especially in situations where there's a power dynamic, like in a church.
Absolutely. And it also highlights the responsibility we all have to seek out the truth, to be critical of the information we're given, and to demand accountability from those in positions of power.
Right, we have to be willing to ask tough questions and not just accept things at face value.
Yeah, because the truth matters. And even though it might be uncomfortable to confront sometimes, it's the only way to create a more just and ethical world.
Well said.
Yeah.
So with all that we've talked about today, what are you left thinking about? Like, what stands out to you about this whole situation?
Honestly, it just really underscores the importance of transparency and accountability, especially within institutions like churches where people are putting their faith and trust in others.
Yeah,
And it makes me think about the courage it takes for someone like Cindy Clemencher to come forward and share her story, knowing that it might not be easy and that she might face backlash.
right. That takes a
Yeah.
lot of strength.
Absolutely. And it also makes me think about how we as a society handle these kinds of situations, how we support survivors, how we hold abusers accountable, and how we create spaces where people feel safe to come forward and share their truth.
Those are some really important questions to consider.
They are, and I think this whole situation, as complex and disturbing as it is, can serve as a catalyst for some much-needed conversations and changes in how we address these issues.
Yeah, I hope so. So for everyone listening, I encourage you to keep thinking about these questions, to stay informed, and to speak out against any form of abuse or injustice you see in the world.
Yeah, we all have a role to play in creating a safer and more just society.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.